Hey book friends, what's up? How's it going? Thanks for stopping by for today's video. We are going to get a twofer in this video today. I talk about books 1 and 2 in what I think is a duet. I could be wrong. I hope I'm not wrong. The books are Perfect Dissonance 1 and 2, The Pounding Skin Duet by L.M.Kennedy. I'm sorry if it's not a duet. Now I feel like I've said that 10 times and it might not even be a duet. Let me tell you, I have just ventured over in TikTok in the last month or so. And so what I've been trying to do is to remember when I sit down to shoot this video and a thumbnail to also do a little snippet for TikTok. Boy, it is harder than it seems. I always trip over my words and I don't know why that's hard for me, but yet I can sit here and like my brain just like clicks in and I can start talking about the books, no problem. Just an interesting observation. In any case, Perfect Dissonance, I actually had to look up what dissonance meant. Since I didn't know what it meant when I read the book, and I didn't look up books, and I didn't look up the definition until I was preparing for the video, I was like, okay, that makes perfect sense. Very interesting, the use of that word, I feel like. Really specific as well. The first book, Perfect Dissonance 1, I believe, is about Jared and Lydia. Lydia is in her younger 20s. She's finishing studying psychology, I believe, and she has to decide, and she volunteers at a drug rehabilitation center. She's in her last volunteer session of her career to that point, and then she's got to finish up some schooling, some papers and tests, and then she's kind of done, and she needs to decide at this point when the book starts if she wants to continue and go on the psychology path or take another branch in, you know, sort of in the same area but not work as clinical setting, stuff like that. The book takes place in Chicago, which of course I loved. And I thought that was an interesting place to start the book. She is at work, like I said, it's her last volunteer shift, and there's a patient that's been brought in, and he's screaming. And everyone can kind of hear him, and she's like, what is going on with this patient? She takes it upon herself with one of the nurses to go in and talk to him and find out why he's screaming. Is he in pain? Is there, you know, something else wrong? What is he being withdrawn from? It was an interesting interaction, I felt like. And I felt like through that interaction, I knew Lydia right away. She has this calming presence and she talks to him, this patient. Because she took the time to actually go and talk to him and look him in the eyes, she finds out that he's just irritated because A, he doesn't want to be there, and B, they tried to stick him with some medicine and he got pissed. So C, he's acting out and doing that by screaming. Now, let's remember, he's a drug addict. So, and as it turns out later in the story, we know that he was addicted to crack cocaine. So he's out of, you know, he's not mentally right in that moment, but just her talking to him, he stops screaming. They're able to take the restraints off of him. And as it turns out, it's Jared, the other main character in the book. Once she helps him out and then leaves, that's kind of it. Now, we know because she talks to her best friend, Clara, that she was like very interested in him. Yes, physically, but also because her heart is in her work. And she wanted to know what happened to him and why he was like that. And so she was obviously in the right person for the right job. You know what I mean? Going forward, she decides she's not really sure what she wants to do with the rest of her life. And she doesn't know if she wants to continue with school or what. So she decides to take a year off and she's going to work at a local coffee shop. and just kind of mindless, but like she's fine with it, and it pays the bills enough so she can just take a breather from the heaviness of what she has done with school and with working at the rehab center. She leads kind of a quiet life, and her best friend Clara, who she lives with, is like, girl, we got to get out. Like, you can't have another Friday night with like sitting on the couch watching TV. You're young, you're beautiful, like let's go out. She convinces her, and Lydia and Clara's boyfriend decide to go out to a local bar. They play live music and they're having a great time, and all of a sudden she looks up and realizes, oh my God, that's the patient from the rehab center singing up on the stage. Clara knows who it is. They're both kind of shocked, and he's this whole different person. Time has passed, and all of a sudden she's looking up at this man who, when she left him, was not in a good way. And yet there he is on stage, and he's like this rock star, and she's taken aback by it. And this is what Lydia says. Taking a cleansing breath, I was about to start coaching myself to relax when Jared glanced over and our gazes locked. My breath caught when he stumbled on his words, the last sentence of the chorus falling off his lips in front of the whole bar. It was as I'd feared, and my body flashed ice, my stomach locked in an iron vice. I was screwing up his performance. I should have left when I had the chance. Okay, interesting. And then she goes on to say, I found it hard not to stare. A few times I was sure he caught my eye, and I couldn't stop grinning like a starstruck idiot. How could this be the same guy I'd first met at Misty Lake? The Misty Lake Jared was an angry asshole who seemed to care little about anything. This Jared was vibrant and an amazingly talented musician. This Jared was someone I didn't want to take my eyes off of. They both know it's kind of unethical for them to have any interaction outside of Misty Lake, but one thing leads to another, and Jared kind of chases after her. And Jared said this, and I really liked him. After not really liking him before, I wasn't sure how I felt about him. But then he said this, and I saw the chance. From that first moment when you walked in my room, when I was restrained, I nodded, the encounter still vivid in my memory. He continued, from that moment, I knew you were there to save me. He cleared his throat. This might sound corny, but I don't know if I would have made it back without you. I was so hard gone by that time. I didn't give a crap about anything or anyone. All it took was for you to listen. You cared enough to just listen. It was exactly what I needed at that moment. Jared, I said, and smiled up at the couple walking past us before looking up at him. You're giving me way too much credit. He shook his head. The hair from his mohawk fell in his eyes, and he smoothed it back with shaking fingers. You can think what you want. The edges of his lips trembled, making my legs weak. But I know the truth. He paused. You saved me from myself. My heart hammered, and I struggled to draw an even breath. They have chemistry, and they both feel it. I worried that with that, though, I worried a little bit. I did. And you probably know what I mean. And I don't like to give spoilers, so I'm not going to give all the story away. But I did worry what that was going to set them up for in the future. Jared kind of gets his way and wants to thank Lydia. He is also a very accomplished tattoo artist, hence all the ink he has all over him. And she agrees. And so she goes, and she doesn't really know what she wants, but oh my God. The part where she goes to his tattoo shop and all of that and him inking her, it's so adorable. And they're kind of tiptoeing around each other, and it's steamy, and there's so much tension. Oh my God. Written absolutely perfectly. I loved it all. We know that Jared is not completely clean. We know he's off the hard drugs, but he's drinking a lot. And he performs every Friday night with his band in this same bar where she saw him originally. And he asks her to come see him again, and she does. I was kind of propelled back to, I don't really like him. I don't know if I like him. I don't know how I feel about him. And because I know he's not completely clean, I worried again about what this balance was going to be between them, because he's an addict and she's a counselor. I mean, that is not the best way to start a relationship, and they were definitely trying to start a relationship. And this is what Lydia says. Here I was witnessing an addict losing control of himself. If Jared had learned anything in rehab, it was that he could not allow himself to become this intoxicated. It didn't matter what it was, drugs, alcohol, over-the-counter medication, all of it was supposed to be off limits or used in moderation. And he's off the rails. And he kind of does some stuff in the audience where I was like, you know she's there. Why are you doing that? I was not happy. I was feeling very protective of Lydia, and I was not happy about Jared. Everyone around them, all of Jared's friends and his brother Jessie, know that she's who she is and that she helped him in rehab, and that they saw him try to start to change. So they are like trying to bring her in and like have her help him. And she's putting the brakes on, and I respected that with her. Stuff goes down. It is not pretty. And she knows it. All of her wealth of knowledge that she has, she knows what she's looking at. She separates herself from him. And I was sad for her. And this is what she says. There was a hole in my chest for Jared, and no amount of time seemed to fill it. Logically, I knew getting together with him would be risky. I couldn't live my life worried he was going to go back to crack or his ex-girlfriend every time his past with Jessie came up in conversation. I needed to move forward, needed to figure out my path, and hoped he would find some way to heal himself. As agreed, Jared hadn't texted me once since the day Zeke dragged me to his parents' shop. Although I would verbally confirm that this is what I wanted, in actuality, my heart bled, and I spent far too much time debating whether or not I should message him. Perhaps this was for the best, the time away, but the last few months hadn't passed easily, and thoughts of Jared consumed me. Okay. What I didn't really realize while I was reading this first book, how much groundwork L.M.Kennedy was laying for the second book. So I really do encourage, don't just read the first book. Make sure you read the second book too, because oh my gosh, the second book, it was amazing. Anyway, we know in this book that Jared has a twin, Jessie, his brother. Jessie is in a wheelchair. There is a lot of unknowns as to, as far as Lydia goes, what happened. We know that he wasn't always in a wheelchair. So what happened? We know that their parents are dead. Jared has alluded to in some conversations with Lydia about his past, he is broken, and it's because of his past. That's why Lydia is the perfect person to help him heal, but yet he won't let her in. And there's a lot of torturous heartbreak around that. And that's where I was so worried about what the relationship was going to be. And then this happened. I savored the heat of him for a moment before speaking. Are you ready to share? Can you let me in? He closed his eyes and nudged my nose with his words whispering across my lips. I don't really think I have a choice. I can't handle these memories anymore, the pain. His eyes popped open. The anger, it's too much. I'm breaking in two. My heart bled. After a pause, he continued, and you deserve to know what's going on in this effed up head of mine. I can't keep dicking you around. So they have a breakthrough. just in time for it to be the end of the book. And then we move on to Perfect Dissonance 2. Perfect Dissonance 2 is told from Jessie and Jared's perspective. I loved how it switched a little bit, and I didn't know if it was just like the first book was Jared's story and then the second book was Jessie's story, but it was so much more than that. Even though it's both of their perspectives, it is highly focused on Jessie, but there's so much of Jared in it and what these brothers go through, what they have gone through, what they go through in this book, and how it ends. Oh my gosh, I was kind of an emotional mess at the end in the very best way. I liked Jessie immediately when we met him in the first book. So I was anxious when I opened the book and saw that Jessie is the first person we hear from to see where his story was going to go. We don't get many answers about why he's in a wheelchair. We know he wasn't always in a wheelchair. We don't get much of that in the first book. We know some, but we learn so much more. And this second book is so much more raw and gritty that there were times where my heart was broken, and it's quite dark. It was sometimes hard for me to wrap my head around some of the things that L.M.Kennedy was writing because it's so horrible. That being said, the journey she takes us on with Jessie and Jared at the end, it made it that much sweeter to be where they end up at the end of the book. Does that make sense? Jared and Jessie are twins, identical twins. So to see the picture of Jared in my mind, and then to know that there's a duplicate of him in Jessie, but yet they're so different. Jessie is an attorney. He lives in Detroit, but ends up having to move back to Chicago. And that's a hard move for him. Chicago is where they're from. It holds a lot of very sad, horrible memories for Jessie, which is why he moved. And this is what he says about moving back. The memories are still here. It's not easy. It's not easy for me either, Jared said, his gaze darting to the door when it crashed open with a jingle of bells. But I'm working through the memories day by day. He touched the center of his chest, hour by hour, second by second. It's easy for you. You have Lydia. Jared flinched and I smiled thinly. I'm sorry, that wasn't fair. In all honesty, I truly believed he would not have made it as far as he had without Lydia. She had been his turning point, the proverbial crossroad, and had pulled him from the darkness. I had no such lifeline. His frown deepened. You have me, Jessie. I'm here for you, man. Whatever you need. He nodded at the table. Just say the word. I examined my brother's face. It was amazing how similar we were, yet in the same heartbeat, how different. How easily Jared was soothed by a word, a statement, a look. All I had to do, all he wanted, was for me to tell him he was right. Things were better, and I was a new man because he was there for me. All fixed, all better. That the years of beatings, of mental torture, were undone in that moment. Jared is trying to reach Jessie at an emotional level that Jessie sees, but he's not able to be there yet. Things are not perfect with Lydia and Jared. We get a lot of their relationship in this book. I was kind of sad about that there kept being these things thrown at them. Not that I wanted it to be rainbows and butterflies, because that's not how this book reads, but I hoped to see strength and conviction and Jared on the wagon, so to speak. I wondered if they were going to get through the trials that were being thrown at them. There was this one really sweet, tender moment between them. And boy, if I was Lydia, I would have been super pissed off and not as gracious as she was. She stands toe to toe with Jared, and she expresses exactly how she feels, exactly how he's making her feel, exactly how she feels about the situation. And he has opened himself up to her in their relationship, and they've grown in trust, that he's honest with her. He doesn't try to hide. He doesn't sugarcoat. It's not perfect, but this moment between them was a very tense moment. And she walks away from him, and this is the next interaction. And I just thought it was so sweet. Lydia, his voice trembled. Can I come in? Why? Because I love you. Oh my God. So there, she had gone in the bathroom and Jared followed her. And that's from Jesse's perspective. And he's kind of watching and listening to what's going on. And when Jared said, because I love you, oh my God. Him saying, because I love you, and her being able to hear him, and as mad as she was at him, I just loved that moment. It made me teary. It made my heart pump. I loved it. There is drama with the band, with Jared's band. There's, not savory people around them completely. Not everyone is supportive of Jared's sobriety. Wheels are falling off with some of the band members. And where Jessie finds love is with somebody I didn't expect. And it's somebody that he and Jared have known their whole lives. She's in the periphery of being a really close friend. And I was like, oh, okay. And it turns out there was always something there with them. And I loved how it was written. So her name is Mai, and I think that's how we pronounce it. And she's just broken up with a long-term boyfriend, very long-term. And Jessie's like, I don't know if this is the right time. Maya's the one that's kind of going after Jessie a little bit. And I was like, oh, don't break his heart. Please don't break his heart. They're kind of hashing out a little bit of why she feels like she's ready to move on and open to something. And this is their conversation. I should have told you I'm sorry. Don't be. She stood straighter, chin lifted. I knew what was going on and chose to stay. I frowned. Why? I loved him, she said matter-of-factly. Or I thought I loved him. Harry has had a difficult life. You know that his mom left. He needed me, needed someone stable, and I was alone a lot. She scanned my face. He was all I had for a very long time. In a way, I think we took care of each other when no one else wanted to. What changed? You, Jessie. You came back. I think it was destiny that you returned to Chicago, returned to me. It was like I was being given a second chance at making it right. Seeing you again brought me back to high school and all the fantasies about you that carried me through. Having you here again, having you around, gave me the strength to leave Harry. I've given him years of my life. You've seen it. I have. Years of dealing with his emotional outbursts, the other women. I'm tired. Her shoulders sagged. Tired of working so hard only to be rewarded with news of yet another girl. I don't have to put up with that. Can't keep looking away. I love you, Jessie. I want you. Oh, it was so sweet. I was like, okay, don't break his heart. If you break his heart, I'm going to come after you. This book, this second book, is so much about healing emotionally, physically, on different levels. I loved that. As dark as it was learning about their upbringing and about their family and the things they've been through, there's so much light and levity in how L.M.Kennedy wrote their emotional growing and opening up their hearts and being, when they have people around that they know they can trust. It was like a breath of fresh air towards the end of this book, because you could see the words felt lighter. Everything felt right. Jared says this. This is a part from Jared's perspective. And I was like, here we go. He's healing. I glanced over at Lydia and she smiled weakly, her eyes sad. She knew what I was going to tell Renata. After Jessie had stormed out of the apartment that morning with his belongings, I had to tell Lydia what was going on, and I'd finally broken down. I cried about the surgery, and I cried about his rejection. I cried about the returning memories that came more often now that Jessie was home. I could go for months without a flashback, without the crippling memories that emerged from the shadowed recesses of my mind, like cancer. But in the last 2 weeks, they'd become a daily occurrence. Lydia had held me, cried with me, and even though nothing had changed, by the time I'd emptied my heart to her, I felt better. She could calm the beast when no one else on this planet could. Lydia Hernandez was my lifeline. Losing my brother was one thing, but if I ever lost her, I'd be done. Oh, Jared. Oh my God. They are both so hurt. And these are young men in their young 20s. And then this happened. I broke down in a fit of tears and couldn't finish the conversation. In the last few months, I'd done much crying, not exactly in line with the sexy rock god persona I once had, but healing sometimes is painful, and I wanted to heal, wanted to be free of the guilt, the memories of the past, and welcomed the release. Jared went from me not knowing if I liked him to this amazing man that I got to know and understood. And I loved how his character changed. And we were reading him change. And it was all really amazing. And then Jessie was completely different than Jared, but just as hurt. But he heals as well. Oh, I really did love it. And Lydia, freaking rock star. Soft, kind-hearted woman, a great character with a good head on her shoulders, a backbone, and a very tender heart. I loved them all. Let me know if you have read Perfect Dissonance 1 or 2 or any of L.M. Kennedy's other books. I would love to hear. While you're here, I would love for you to hit the thumbs up button and consider subscribing. When you do that, it not only helps my channel, but it will help this video get shown to more people here on YouTube. As always, I will put a direct link down in the description box for both books, so if you want to grab them, you can do it straight from there. Thanks for hanging out with me today, guys. I'll see you soon. Bye!